Hello, fine people of Baltimore and beyond. This is my show, so my idea, I suppose. So Jake was like, "You do this one." I was like, "Okay."
I'll
So
not
with
actually
that,
agree to you. I didn't say anything. I want that on the record.
I know, but the look on your face within the first 2 seconds of going live, you were like, "You're doing it, Bucko," and I was like, "Okay." You just gave me that smile. I was like, "I'll go." So we are live. It is Monday, January 6th. 9:30 p.m. Eastern time, and we went live after the Ravens Browns. The Ravens wrap up the AFC North, finish the season 12-5, all of that good stuff. And like we said, Jake, on the last episode that we did, Ravens fans have been waiting for the playoffs all year long, more or less. They do start 0-2. Maybe there's a little bit of question mark to some people there, but it has felt since the Ravens got back around 500 in October and all that stuff, it has felt imminent that they would end up in the playoffs. It's just who are they going to play? Where is it going to be? Those kinds of things, of which Ravens fans should feel very fortunate for that sentiment. And I don't want to say people have slept walked through this season, but it is kind of ho-hum. The Ravens are in the playoffs again. Now what are they going to do? Coming off that AFC Championship loss last year. So we're going live every night this week. I'm going to go live every night this week. If Jake can join, he's got some work stuff, but we'll join as well. Cole, Brian, Eric, Taylor, whoever. We'll try and get some other people on. But it is the time of the year to have the most fun, to go crazy, to enjoy yourself. Like my little Poe here. So let's have some fun, man. Let's talk about this matchup. Let's talk about the Ravens. Let's talk about Ravens Steelers. Jake, this is the first matchup between these two teams in the postseason in Baltimore, which feels insane to say. They have had some storied games in the postseason. Do you think that? What do you think about that dynamic? What do you think about the difference between playing here and there? What do you think about when you just think of this rivalry and the fact that this is a new chapter? This is something that has never happened before. They've played in the AFC Championship. They've played with the highest stakes possible already. Somehow we are, as fans of the Ravens and frankly of the Steelers, blessed with this next chapter. So what are your initial kind of just thoughts?
Yeah, no, I've always kind of, I don't know, like if people would agree with this or if their pride would let them agree with it necessarily, but I've always kind of seen the Ravens as like the very, very like a smidge of a little brother in this rivalry. And there's a couple of reasons for that. I think mainly because they're the much newer franchise, obviously. I think as you and I have talked about on the show, like I think the Ravens obviously modeled themselves after the Steelers organization. I think they've owned up to that. I think Bisciotti has owned up to that that's the model that they wanted to follow. I think they've executed it to perfection. But yeah, man, it's like Steelers a little bit better, I think, in terms of wins since the Ravens have come in. It's probably not by much, I don't think. I think Tomlin's got Harbaugh by a little bit as well in that category. Outside of that, 2 Super Bowls, you're pretty much splitting hairs, but I kind of always have viewed the Ravens as sort of the underdog kind of punching up at the Steelers in this matchup a little bit. And I think you're right in that it's reflected in the fact that when they have met in the postseason, it's, always been in Pittsburgh. Now, I feel like maybe the last 5-6 years, the guard has changed a little bit where it feels like the Ravens are taken a little bit more seriously as a contender. And the Steelers, obviously, there's a lot of reasons why they haven't been in the same stratosphere. I think the chief one being the quarterback situation for both teams. I think the Steelers just kind of haven't been in that national conversation because they haven't been able to figure things out post Roethlisberger. So, yeah, I think there's maybe been a little bit of a sea change in that, little brother, big brother respect in the last several years. But obviously, like we've got with all the discussions about the rivalry and how one-sided the win column has been towards the Steelers over that period, it's a complicated sort of, stew of things that have kind of, come together and, I don't know, just painted this rivalry in a very interesting light. And I think what better way to kind of take the temperature of that than flipping the script and taking a playoff game to Baltimore where the Steelers are almost double-digit underdogs in this game. I'm not sure where the line is right now. I think it opened at 8.5.
I think it's right at 10. I think it opened actually at 6.5, then shot to 8.5, and now it's 10.
Yeah.
And I had a stat about that. I'll pull it up in a second.
Yeah, I mean, double-digit underdogs for Pittsburgh coming into Baltimore. I mean, 30 years ago, you probably wouldn't have thought that would happen. And yeah, here we are. And it's just like that's kind of where I'm at with it. I'm just sort of in a reflective mood thinking about the fact that Lamar has been in the league for a while now. He's a veteran and got a lot of narratives working for them. He's got some working against them. Chief amongst them, his performance in the postseason, and also chief amongst them, his performance against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, It's a game that the Ravens have the opportunity to squash some narratives. I think it's a game that the Steelers have the opportunity to maybe prove that they belong amongst the elite of the AFC. I think a lot of people were kind of maybe trying to wish cast them into that role earlier in the season, but now that's, kind of worn off after they lose 4 straight in devastating fashion. I think the Russ Wilson magic dust has maybe worn off a little bit, but I don't know, man. Rivalry game, rubber match. I think it has potential to be a weird one. We'll get into our predictions much later in the week, but I don't know. Just overall, I'm just really intrigued by this. I think, like I said, I don't know if I'd say changing of the guard is the right word, but it just kind of feels like the little brother has maybe turned into a little bit of the big brother here in the last couple of years. So
it has, and you put that well with the Ravens coming in as a newer franchise and trying to establish themselves and reestablish themselves from what they were as the Browns, as the Colts, whatever you want to call it. So a lot of excitement there. Since 2010, double-digit favorites in the NFL playoffs are 17-1 straight up, according to Bet Labs. This is from John Ewing, who is data and PR for BetMGM. And those teams are 13-5 against the spread. So heavy favorites have boded well. Double-digit favorites have boded well in the playoffs. I also have here just an interesting little list, of course. And I do hate including things from really beyond the last 3 years or so in any of these kind of trends, but whatever. Against the spread in the playoffs, ATS, Patrick Mahomes, 13-5, has the best mark. Baker Mayfield, 3-1. Jordan Love, 2-0, 2 games there. Did he miss a game? I don't know. This is from John Ewing as well. How would he be 2-0?
Against the spread, you're saying?
Oh, yeah, spread. Never mind. I'm an idiot. There we go. Yep, thank you. Jordan Love, 2-0 against the spread. CJ Stroud, 1-1. Stafford is 4-4. Jared Goff is also 4-4. Russell Wilson, 8-8. So Stafford, Goff, Wilson all sitting exactly at 500. Justin Herbert, 0-1 against the spread. That loss, my God, that feels like eons ago where the Jags came back. And the Jags gave the Chiefs a run for their money, too, in the divisional round. Jalen Hurts 2-3 against the spread. Lamar Jackson 2-4. Josh Allen 3-7 against the spread. So really not. I mean, every quarterback here other than Jaden Daniels, I believe, and Darnold. Those are the only two, if I'm not mistaken. Trying to think elsewhere. Those are the only 2 newcomers. So some seasoned quarterbacks with what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of these quarterbacks playing at least 4 games in the playoffs previously. So that era, talking of eras, talking of all those things, it's kind of, this is the beginning of that next era fully. I feel like the Brady, everything, it's distant. Mahomes has taken the early dominant factor, and the Chiefs have taken that early dominant factor over everyone else at this point. The Eagles, man, have consistently been really successful, played in championships, played in Super Bowls, haven't been able to get it done since Dougie P, as my dog Tupac is just going nuts right now. He's been trapped in.
Is he on the stairs?
Yeah, he's on the stairs running laps, and I don't know what the heck he's doing. He doesn't want to go in the snow, rightfully so. His little paws freeze. I took him out twice. But so interesting era. And like you said, I wanted to go back and kind of read a little bit of the Steelers-Ravens history here. They have played in the Steelers. This was a cool article by Dale Lowley covering the Steelers, editor for the Steelers, I think, flagship website. And he said, since the NFL first added the wild card in 1970, only one non-division, it expanded in 1978. And since 1978, the Steelers have played a divisional opponent in the postseason 11 times. They are 10-2 against divisional opponents in the playoffs. This will be the 13th game they play against the Ravens. It will be the 5th playoff game against the Ravens, all of which have come since 2001. There were 2001, 2002, technically. I hate when people say the year before, like the Ravens didn't win the Super Bowl in 2012. They won it in 2013. That always bothers me.
It's that season, though. I mean,
I need the hyphen at least. If you're going to say the year before, give me the hyphen, because it didn't technically occur then. Always bothers me.
You're very in the minority on that one, because I think it's well accepted that it is the previous season. You'll say
I'm willing to accept that. I'm willing to accept being in the minority. So 2002, 2009, 2011, and their most recent meeting was in January of 2015. The other opponents the Steelers faced were actually the Houston Oilers, who they were 3-0 against. They've played the Browns 3 times, most recently lost to them. Baker Mayfield, Ben Roethlisberger, and that, what was that, 48-37 game. And they're 2-0 against the Bengals as well. The Steelers all time are 21-2 against the Ravens in Pittsburgh. They are 15-14 against the Ravens in Baltimore. They have won 6 of their last 8 at M&T Bank Stadium, but not most recently. Was that December 15th, perhaps, when they played? Something along those lines. No, week after that. I think it was the 21st. There we go. So 2002, January 20th, divisional round, Steelers 27-10. That was the Steelers' first playoff game since 1997, actually. They had been in kind of that weird mediocrity. The Steelers get a pair of rushing touchdowns from Amos Zaraway, one of the coolest names of all time. I remember him back in the day.
Yeah, that was the Gareback season. Anyone interested, that's in season in between podcast I did last year, 2 years ago, whatever it was. We went through the 01 season there. And sort of the way that ended up in Pittsburgh.
You can find season in between just on our channel, which Jake did the season between 2000, 2001, when the Ravens won the first Super Bowl, and 2012, 2013, the second, that 2006 team that was a really interesting team that I do think that was the best team in Ravens history. You have many, many, many thoughts on that through the entire series that you did.
Yeah, no, I think confluence of a lot of different things. I think McNair obviously was sort of the perfect bridge quarterback, perfect kind of, presence for that team, but not to derail us in our Steelers discussion here.
Yeah, Elvis Gerback. Baltimore had 22 rushing yards in that game on 11.
Jamal Lewis famously hurt before that season. Yeah, that was kind of a rough. They go out and they pay Gerback because they had gotten rid of Dilfer. They said, let's supercharge this thing even more. Let's go sign Elvis Gerback to get this passing game really going. And then
sexiest man in sports.
Yeah, Jamal Lewis gets hurt, and Billick says something to the effect of, well, those 5-yard runs that Jamal had, now it's just going to be 5-yard passes from Elvis. It's like, well, I don't know if 1 + 1 = 2 there, Brian. And I think he was proven wrong on that one, sadly.
Unfortunately so. Brent Alexander had 2 of 3 interceptions for the Steelers. The Ravens scored 1 touchdown in that game, an 88-yard punt return by Jermaine Lewis midway through the third quarter. And then Cordell Stewart put the game away on a 32-yard touchdown to Plaxico Burress. No yards were had for the Steelers in that game either. Stewart had 154 yards. Zaraway ran well, but wasn't like a crazy game for him other than the touchdowns. Then they go meet January 18th, 2009 in the AFC Championship game, a game which a 16-year-old Spencer, after that game, said, the Ravens will never win a Super Bowl with Joe Flacco, which was, of course, wrong. One of the many things I've been wrong about. The Steelers sweep the Ravens in the regular season, end up getting the trifecta against them, following close wins, 23-20 in overtime, and then 13-9 later in the season. Then they got out to a 13-0 lead and had 2 Jeff Reed field goals after Ben Roethlisberger hit Santonio Holmes. The Ravens score a touchdown, Willis McGahee. We talked about this game recently. 4:39 left, of course. Probably the most famous play in this entire rivalry, I'd say, is Troy Polamalu's interception of Joe Flacco on 3rd and 13, which he returned 40 yards for a touchdown, and the game finishes 23-14 with no more scoring after that. And then these teams met January 15th, 2011. The Steelers defeating the Ravens 31-24, a little bit more higher scoring than any of these other affairs. The split in the regular season, the Steelers have a 1-yard touchdown from Mendenhall. They end up having Ryan Clark force a fumble against Ray Rice, which was covered by Lamar Woodley, sets up a Roethlisberger to Heath Miller touchdown. Clark then picked off Flacco and returned it 17 yards to the Baltimore 25.
Speaking of Lamar Woodley, he also he actually agreed with you on the Ravens will never win a Super Bowl with Joe Flacco, except he phrased it not in this lifetime, famously.
He did. He certainly did. Lamar Woodley, what a good player back in the day, too. He gets forgotten.
He was a beast. That's kind of like I think we were having the conversation about like the rookie wage scales and how they've kind of tipped the balances towards all or nothing with these quarterbacks. Like, man, before that, and I know you had to pay quarterbacks a little more exorbitantly on the rookie contract, but like before that, it was kind of just the Wild West. And like these rosters were just so fucking good, like top to bottom. And like, that's really, I think, why this rivalry was at its best between, Odd 8 and, through 2012, basically.
That's a great point. And with that, I said I would announce the contest details. We are going to do a giveaway, 2 tickets to the game this Saturday, Ravens-Steelers. It's going to be a cold one. If that is an issue for you as well, if you win, or if you just know somebody, a kid or something that needs a coat, we'll do our best to try and keep people warm here. It is freezing out. It has been dumping snow in the mid-Atlantic here for going on I don't know, almost 24 hours at this point, something like
You
that.
get you get your shoveling done.
I did my best. I used a tennis racket to clean my car off earlier. I can't find my ice scraper. But with that in mind, the contest details, what we want you to do, make sure you are subscribed to this channel. Thank you, JD Newman, as well, for the chat there. We'll get to that and get to the Steelers a little bit. Big appreciation. That'll help us pay for these tickets. If anybody else wants to help pay, that would be outstanding. But we will be sending 2 people. What we need you to do to enter the contest, we're going to announce the winner on Friday. So in order to enter, you need to, number 1, subscribe to the channel, and number 2, tweet us a video. In the video, I want you to give us your reason. Somewhat family friendly, doesn't have to be insane, but you can be as funny as you want or as serious as you want about why the Ravens will beat the Steelers this weekend. And make sure to just put in the caption of the video, the tweet itself with the video, hashtag E52 giveaway. That's hashtag exit52 for short, E52 giveaway. So again, subscribe to this channel and tweet us a video why you think the Ravens will beat the Steelers. Whatever you want to do with that, that's your own interpretation. We will choose a winner with the hashtag E52 giveaway. So send us in a video, have as much fun with it or be as serious with it or do whatever the heck you want with it within reason or half reason. And we're going to announce the winner Friday. I will say we'll announce it at 8 p.m. tentatively. If that updates, we'll tweet something out. So I'm going to be going live. We're going to be going live. Anyone who can join, that's my goal for this week, going live every single week. We sent Marquise to the game this past Saturday. He looked like he had a good time. Didn't get to meet up with him, but hopefully Keith had a good time. And we did a Derrick Henry jersey giveaway. So we always say the sausage being made. We're taking our YouTube revenue that we get, that little bit from our mom and pop shop, 2.78 thousand subscribers, and doing giveaways instead of paying for ads, because I think that'll get us more subscribers. And we want more subscribers so we can bring you more content, have more fun talking about the Ravens like this. So thank you so much to all the listeners. Going to try and send 2 folks to the game. JD, thank you so much for the comment. He says Russ has looked cooked over the last month. Not a bright scene. We'll get into a deeper dive there probably tomorrow and Wednesday. We'll do a full preview as usual, probably on Thursday, and then try and have some fun on Friday, something like that. Cole Jackson will be down here. Maybe we'll get the Canadian into the video a little bit there. Maybe we'll have him pick the winner or something like that. So Brett here saying a snow game. Yup, it's been snowing all week. And YG Meach. This is not the preview, YG Meach. We're gonna be going live every day.
Yeah, a lot of talk about the Justin Fields package, which we'll be getting into on the preview. Just love talking about guys and packages for guys and a guy's package. I know you're big into that. So very exciting. Wintry mix currently in the forecast. 33 I saw was the temperature, which actually wouldn't be terrible. It was in like I feel like low 20s, and then we had wind chill in that Browns game, which I was just miserable. Anyone who knows me knows I hate the cold. I'm just I don't know. I'm a warm-blooded animal. Someday
you like to golf in the freezing though. You'll golf pretty damn cold and pretty late in the year.
Yeah, I'm getting like maybe a little more away from that. Like, when you get to a point where you have to like hammer a tee into the ground, which I've never actually done, but I feel like I probably should have at certain points. I feel like that's kind of when you're maybe a little bit at your breaking point. But I don't know. I haven't swung the sticks in a while either. It's just the weather's been too crappy and just hasn't been an opportunity, and I'm not feeling like myself. So I need the Ravens to keep this train rolling for me to keep my other sources of happiness alive.
Hopefully everyone listening to this is probably hopeful for the same. Lamar Woodley, we talked about Brent Kiesel in that game back in 2011.
Great.
Ends up recovering a Flacco fumble, and Sean Suisa makes a 34-yard field goal to go up 24-21. The Ravens trade blows with a Billy Cundiff field goal. And then prior to the 2-minute warning, the Steelers had 3rd and 19 from their own 38. And little rookie, as the writer wrote, little rookie Antonio Brown down the right sideline. Brown, who had just 16 receptions, caught that ball against the side of his helmet. I can see it in my mind right now. Pinned it against his helmet.
Yeah, there was that. And then I think preceding that, maybe that drive or the drive before for the Ravens, I think we might have had 1 or 2 drops. I think Bolden might have had a bad one go through his hands. And I think TJ Hoosh, that might have been a 4th down. He let one go through his hands. That was tough.
Hoosh kind of jumped for no reason. And Bolden, I think, just freaking fibbed one. And I remember there was a lot of people being like, Bolden is not as good as they said he was. He is not even a 1,000-yard receiver.
He was, but like it's just so funny that like that's like if he didn't have that 2012 run, like nobody would talk about him the way that they do now. He was just very productive, like but like the numbers just wouldn't jump out, and they definitely didn't in Baltimore. People were right about that. He never had the 1,000-yard season. I think he might have had 7 touchdowns one year, but I don't think he ever went over that number. But just a chain mover in that respect. And then obviously I think he had a great run with San Francisco after the Ravens. So, he definitely was still building his resume there, but I think he could be a Hall of Famer one day. And the fact that like he didn't really pop off statistically with the Ravens is funny. And then like if he had not had that run, I think a lot of people would associate that drop with him as well, which I'm glad they don't, because he deserves better.
Certainly. He was no statistical champion. I think in that same season, 2011, he had like 108 targets and only had like 59 catches or something like that. I think he might have missed a couple games, but not super efficient. It was never super efficient with him, but he did have a lot of high leverage moments, especially during that Super Bowl run and otherwise. I was really upset when they got rid of him. I had his jersey. I always say, until Lamar is definitely overtaken. I'll throw Andrews in that conversation, but I always say, who's my favorite offensive Raven of all time? Anquan Boldin. Just tough as shit. Just so tough. Blocked his ass off, made big plays when they needed it. Loved him.
And it's just funny the way it's affected like the discourse around wide receiver in this town, which was already like obviously an insane sort of thing, but then it just got more and more pronounced through the 2010s. And it's like, well, we just got to go find our Bolden. And it's like, well, it turns out they don't grow on trees. But glad you mentioned Andrews there. I feel like Andrews kind of quietly has become that guy for Lamar. I mean, you could say Pitta, the Flacco Pitta connection, the Lamar Andrews might be more comparable, but I think Mark is kind of in that Bolden mold for you too, where he's just kind of that safety net for you. He always knows where the chains are, doesn't always look pretty, that long catch and run.
Very business-like and competitive too. Not a lot of thrill there, just trying to win damn games and make plays.
Yeah, no, it was also very cool when Bolden came back 2019, retired as a Raven. That was a lot of fun. Unexpected, I think. I think I was at Purple Patio that day. RIP to Mothers. And yeah, he came on the screen and people went nuts. Love Anquan Bolden.
Love him forever. Love Q. 1,159 of you watching right now would love if you could watch on YouTube if possible. And if you could subscribe, that would be great. Again, we're doing that giveaway. Went over that at 9:45 about 7 minutes ago. So if you need the details, I'll tweet them out after this as well. So in that game, after the Antonio Brown catch, the Steelers score. Rashad Mendenhall, who had his ups and downs against the Ravens, certainly scored from 2 yards out with 1:39. The Ravens not able to go drive down the field. Then finally, the lone win that the Ravens have had against the Steelers in the playoffs, January 3rd, 2015, 30-17, the famous Terrell Suggs thigh master interception. The Steelers lost to the Ravens 26-6 in the regular season, and then the Steelers blew the Ravens out 43-23. I've been watching a lot about this game lately. I don't know why.
The blowout or the playoffs?
The playoff game itself and the lead up to it and stories about it and a lot of just it wasn't that huge of a game, but I don't know. This game is just stuck in my mind lately.
That's a sneaky, really fun one. That's the last Flacco playoff win, right? So you got that to look back at. I think Torrey might have had 2 touchdowns in that one, or maybe he only had the one there where Flacco kind of juked out Harrison. And
Torrey, I think, had a toe tap that he missed. There was a floated ball when it was close, and he got his first foot down and then just didn't try to toe tap at all. And I remember, I think like Kurt Warner, I think that game was on NFL Network. I remember who was it? It might have been Deion Sanders. Someone roasted him in the coverage of that game, was like, got a toe tap. You practice that every day. Like, this is the playoffs. You're playing the Steelers. You don't get your foot down. What are you doing?
Yeah, but I mean, he made up for it. He scored the touchdown later. Flacco, like I said, kind of ran around Harrison and then floated one up there, beautiful pass. But that was a really fun win, because that season, that's one season that they probably underachieved in terms of their talent in the regular season. They wind up 10-6. They make the playoffs on the last day against the Browns. They sneak in there as a wild card. Going into Pittsburgh, I remember a lot of people just weren't really feeling the Ravens for the way that their regular season had ended. And, obviously they stunned the Steelers. And then even more memorable in that postseason was their loss, where they go up to New England. You have those 2 touchdown leads, and then Edelman Amendola trick play that would buoy the Patriots all the way to the Super Bowl. And a lot of people think the Ravens could have gone on to a Super Bowl run of their own if they had held on in that game. But yeah, it all got started with that win up in Pittsburgh, which is awesome.
It did. Gary Kubiak, the offensive coordinator there. Tucker hit a 52-yarder. Roethlisberger throws a pick, I believe, to Darian Stewart, who that whenever I realized Darian Stewart existed, it unleashes like 37 memories. I end up getting into like Marlon Brown and stuff in my brain, but he had, I think, 2 picks in that game, maybe at least one. But
I think Roethlisberger might have thrown one on a 2-point conversion to Elam, actually, if I'm remembering correctly, or maybe
that happened as well. But I think he threw 2 picks in that game.
Okay. Well, yeah, because the Suggs, he got one of them, and then
oh yeah, that's what it was. So Darian Stewart won. Yep, I think Stewart might have had a pick in another game, something like that. But yeah, so the Ravens end up scoring a Crockett Gilmore touchdown to take that game effectively, rolling out. Gary Kubiak, a lot of boots in that game as you go back and rewatch. That was the offense, right? It was that Justin Forsett, who I think fumbled in that game too. Justin Forsett on those zone runs, boot off of it. Flacco launching the ball. Flacco was so nimble. That was the end, unfortunately, because the following year, 2015, he sustains the ACL. That was when Flacco was really like way more bold as a mover in the pocket and behind the line of scrimmage and extending plays. And that's what made him so dangerous from really 2011 to 2014. And it was sad when I watched that game, I think like 2 weeks ago, just how well he moved. And then he just got scared after that because he's 6'6" with back problems and knee problems. Can't blame him all.
That was just the perfect time for Kubiak to come there. He had fully physically matured. You could see his baseball background in particular, just like the way that he moved his feet. And, he was obviously a really big guy. Wasn't like super like quick or anything, but you get him in the open field and he could rumble a little bit, and pick up yards with the long strides. And yeah, I mean, those boots were a thing of beauty. I mean, that was really what kind of took the pressure off him after just a lost year with Caldwell there in 2013, where it was just, passing 50 times against the Bills and throwing 5 picks in that one weird game and just, throwing it way too much. They really got back to their bread and butter there. Forsett was awesome that season. Talking about those stretch runs. Like, I'm always just like waiting this season. It's funny for the stretch run with Henry because it feels like every time they go to it, he just breaks off at least like a 20-yard run, sometimes for a touchdown. We saw that last game, but like they don't go to it until like you least expect it. And especially when the other, team least expect it, like they'll do those kind of inside, trap or smash, whatever you want to call it. Like they'll just get blown up at certain points throughout the game. And it's like, fuck, man, like he's getting blown up for, no gain or a loss of 1. It's like, but you got to keep doing that. You got to keep doing that because you got to like sell the stretch later on in the game or sell the play action. So
a ton of fun. Chad Greenberg says we'll be here. Chad, we'll see you there. So yeah, Enjoy Slurms here says had the Suggs catch had me screaming at my friend's apartment. One of just the most Terrell Suggs play of all time. That goofy young, I always think of him as young forever just because he was so much younger than Ray and Ed, and he was always like the fun young one. And just that was him without Ray and Ed.
Funny thing about that. So Michael Pierce gets the pick this past week. John Harbaugh calls it the greatest play in the history of football. I don't know if this clip is lost to history, but I remember on that sound FX of that game, which I probably watched 100 times, immediately, like Harbaugh doesn't even hesitate. He's like, the greatest catch in the history of football. And he like runs up to Suggs and he's like, it's the greatest catch in the history of football. And then he like says it again in the locker room. It's just like, God, John's a funny fucking guy, man.
He is. That was middle John too. That was like the kids are in high school John.
Yeah.
Whereas he wasn't old, wasn't young anymore.
He's doing bits around their friends, hanging out in the kitchen. He's like a, kind of a Tony Soprano type figure.
Speaking of which, so funny, John Harbaugh today. I think Bobby Trossett was the one who originally tweeted it out, and I wanted to upload it here in a second. But Harbaugh this season and how locked in they are and how just insane they have started to become. Like even Marlon Humphrey is not serious. This team is very different than they were a couple of years ago, but wanted to play that clip. And just, it's a snow day in Baltimore in good old Owings Mills. And, Derrick Henry after the game is talking about like, I've made an AFC championship years ago. You guys made an AFC championship this past year. I wasn't a part of that, but we need to lock in. And then lo and behold, they're like testing Lamar Jackson's new fragrance out in the locker room after he's talking about how he likes the lady scents and all that good stuff. So wanted to pull that video up of Johnny Boy here and talk about it because this is just a rare John to me. Let's go. Boom.
Kind of variations of this question all season, but do you feel now that you're going into the playoffs that Derrick Henry gives you a different element than you've had in recent years and really in your whole tenure here? Yes.
John, a big narrative, of course, this week will be Lamar and his 2-4 record in the playoffs. I know you've always used the term a lot of times about how players kind of get calloused. How they get have to go through some experiences, whether physically. Do you think the past experiences that Lamar has had will that serve him well going forward?
Yes. Coach, I don't know if this will elicit an elaborate answer, but Lamar said after the game the other day was sort of a T-shirt and hat game, and he's really focused on what's ahead. Is that sort of the team focus and your focus and sort of the message? Yes.
Just truly, truly unbelievable stuff there from John. And I think Bobby said, in channeling his inner Greg Popovich, the last one too was just like, yes. If your question, I mean, it's tough to get guys to talk, and who knows, it might just be in a bad mood. If your question lasts longer than about 13 seconds,
and if you're opening it with, no offense to the first guy, again, like it's a tougher job than people give reporters credit for. But when you are opening the question with, I know you've got variations of this one all year, like it's maybe either not include that or let's go back to the drawing board a little bit. And the yes, like you can see him, he's in his office, he's got like the body armor cooler in the background, he's just got this look at his eyes, like his eye was twitching at that one point. You can tell he's just like fucking deep into this like Excel sheet about the Steelers and like their tendencies and stuff. And he just had to pause and do this because we talked about it before we got going. Like, man, there's some, post, victory press conferences where he comes in there and he's just beaming, and it's just human nature. We're all like that sometimes. We're in good moods, we're in bad moods. This one, he just wasn't having it like he does sometimes. And it's just always like joy to me. And I know it rankles some people that he'll do that. And I get it, but like, that's just like one of the funnier things about John is just kind of the dynamic that he brings into the press conference from that first answer. Sometimes from the first time you see the look on his face, you know exactly what you're going to get. And we knew we were going to get on this one.
A great comment here from Enjoy Slurms. The duality of yes and good. Both positive affirmations in this scenario, quite different.
Hey, I got a shitty press conference question. Good. You know what, John? Maybe have a better attitude about it. Say good, and I'm gonna give you more than a one-word answer. But I hope he never changes in that regard.
I do too, and the seriousness of this team is something I've talked about. And I don't
Who's got it better than us? Yes.
Who's got it better than us? Yes. The seriousness of this team is something that I do like, and we talked about Terrell Suggs, and I don't mean this as a knock, but it felt like the leadership of that Ravens team post Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, they really turned into like a party. And this Ravens team that bled into that. Mark Ingram, the dancing, the big truz, all that kind of stuff. That is not the Ravens that I grew up on. So my own kind of personal bias, loving Ray Lewis and Ed Reed and all that, they were fun and they had their jokes, but they were as serious as death a lot of the time, especially like in game and stuff like that. So I appreciated Derrick Henry's sentiment. Like give the next month of your life to this. This is 4 or 5 weeks. And there just doesn't Marlon Humphrey as a kid now, he's a dad. He's got dad strength.
I wanted to say specifically about Marlon, this goes all the way back to training camp. I don't know if you remember that clip of him kind of addressing the team and saying like, look, like I'm a veteran now. Like, you got to appreciate every little moment along the way here. And it was as serious as I've heard him speaking. And as we were talking about before we got going, the search function on X has been effectively nuked. So I couldn't go back and find it for the show, but yeah, I couldn't find it. But I very specifically remember, I think I even tweeted about it, like really cool to see from Marlon that he's kind of, he hasn't lost that kind of boyish charm that I think he's always going to have. He's still doing the IG lives and all that, but you can see the sort of the wisdom kind of creeping into him as the years kind of pile on here. And his play is probably better than ever right now. So shout out to him. Everything happens on X, Eric. It's the Everything app. So
it is the Everything app. Certainly. A lot of comments here about this game. And again, like the Terrell Suggs, Brandon Williams, Tony Jefferson, Pause, Eric Weddle, ice cream days. They were some solid teams and they made some playoff runs and things like that. But again, they just weren't serious enough to me of what this franchise is kind of built upon and what kind of even going back to the Colts and Jake, the Colts were a little more regal, I think is probably a better word, but they were pretty serious. And everything kind of was more serious back then, a little bit more regal in that sense and disciplined and militant and a lot of guys that served and all that good stuff. But
if you listen to like stories about Unitas, like he was the type of guy that could absolutely make fun of himself and he would like he owned a bar and he would have his linemen over and like, they drink a beer and they joke around, but he'd also use that time to like talk technique with them. And then like, I remember I had Bill Curry on for the Forgotten Dynasty pod, and he told a story about like, I was walking down to training camp one day, just miserable, like summer heat. And Unitas walks by me. He's like well into his career, kind of old at that point. And he's like whistling a happy tune. And he's like, "What are you whistling about? Why are you so happy?" He's like, "Well, if you're not happy, like maybe you should find somewhere else to be," basically. Like, you got to appreciate every single moment. It's the same thing as like what Marlon was saying. Like, I know practice, like, it might seem like it sucks to us at this point in our career who've already accomplished so much, but like, this is where it all happens. This is where the start of a season begins. So, and yeah, the Colts absolutely were that way, where Unitas would like walk by like linemen and they'd like goose him in the ass as he's like walking to the front of the meeting room, and he'd like turn around and like, hit back at him. And like, he could laugh at himself in that way. And then, when it's time to work, he'd lock 100% in. So don't take yourself seriously, but take the job seriously, I think is what you're driving at. And I think that's kind of what Ray and Ed and those guys excelled at.
And we see comments here. So that's why I'm happy with this team. And I want to tie all of this together. No disrespect to Terrell Suggs, who is imperative to everything that, especially that 2012, 2013 team accomplished. Hall of Famer. I think he should be a first ballot. Absolutely. He's a presence to be dealt with or without Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, and well into his 30s. But the Ravens, there's comments everywhere on the Everything app, on here. For instance, that damn Dub 20 says the Ravens need to be the least penalized and turned over football team on Saturday. And they weren't. This season, they have suspended into that chaotic, uncontrolled lack of discipline. And we saw them come out of the bye. We saw them beat the Steelers because they were least penalized. They did manage to get away with recovering their own fumbles, but they also took one away, turnovers, penalties. And I'm just going to keep coming back to that probably every day this week. What Harbaugh said on Hard Knocks, Monken said the same thing. It's make your kicks, protect the football, take the football away, play discipline. And in these games, that is the Steelers' MO. That is why they have beaten the Ravens handedly lately. And in addition to some, whatever, we've talked about a million reasons why the Ravens have lost some games, subs, COVID, all that stuff. Steelers are as serious as death. I genuinely think TJ Watt is serious as death. Russell Wilson is not doing some Mr. Unlimited shit in Pittsburgh. That is not the way he's acting. He's acting more regal. Not that it's been, great for them the last couple of weeks.
He's been humbled a lot too the last couple of years. You can tell that. I think that Denver kind of took a toll on him.
It definitely did. And the loss of his friend is something I've talked about on this podcast. The loss of the person that was closest to him and that was kind of dealing with his thinking here.
Oh, Andrew Browning.
What's up, Andrew? Thank you so much. Man,
double barrel there with the $50 donation. We appreciate that very much, man.
Absolutely. That's going to help send a couple people to the Ravens Steelers game. We will be giving away tickets. I'll mention that again for anyone that joined late. You can subscribe to this podcast. You can go on and tweet us a video with the hashtag E52 giveaway, Exit 52 giveaway, a video of why you think the Ravens will beat this Pittsburgh Steelers. Thank you very much, Andrew, for that. Anyone else who wants to contribute, maybe we'll eventually get to upgrade tickets, get somebody in the lower bowl. Appreciate it. But again, I think this team takes themselves more seriously than they have in years. I think this team takes them way more seriously than since the Ray Lewis days, to be frank. So I like that a lot. Zay Flowers' injury, a big topic, something I got pretty upset about, frankly, after in the post game, and I still am not feeling great about it. It's the words from John Harbaugh and the words from Schefter and Rappaport and everyone is that effectively it sounds like he is out this game, but they hope he can play next week. Maybe it's a contusion. I don't know. Jake, you perfectly said it. I play doctor. I play operator a little bit too much for not having any medical background.
I want you to do that though. We need,
It's part of what we do here. It's part of what we do here. We each have our things and it's part of what we do. What I have deduced in my great medical studies is that if you have a grade 1 sprain.
You did your practice under Dr. Sins, right? You did a residency there?
That was Mr. Owe.
Okay.
Who got his 10th sack of the season, reached double digits. Doesn't count. Week 18 doesn't count though, right?
Right.
Mike Evans, 1,000 yards, 11 years in a row. Fuck him. Oh, he only did it, in 16 games for the majority of his career. Only played in 11 games this year, had 700 yards in his final 6 games, whatever. Stop talking shit about Mike Evans if you are. That's all I have to say. But grade 1 sprain means no tear. Grade 2 sprain means little tear. Grade 3 sprain means tear. MRI can't tell what a sprain is. It can only tell if there's a tear. So if he has a sprain, that's worse than a bone bruise. He could have both of them. If there's no sprain, they do something called a varus test. And that's pain involvement and just restriction of movement. So hopefully they're able to sneak away. I wasn't sure if you're putting your hard hat on for
Yeah, we got a comment in here. I had never even noticed that. Thank you, Matthew.
What is it?
He said, please turn your Ravens hard hat to the other side, bro. The goofy B placement on that side drives me crazy. Great content, though. Thank you, Matthew. Yeah, I didn't notice that.
That's why we love you guys.
Yeah.
B Fowler says, JJ Sanders, you got it. Intense. Ray, Ed, Nada. It was not, think about Courtney Upshaw. Think about, those kinds of dudes. There was no, Jared Johnson. There was no bullshit going on there, man. Nothing. I mean, think about Ellerby. Think about those guys from that era. They were not some goofy, silly tickle time, pillow fight. They were as serious as death. They had their goofy parts, but that's funny. I've never noticed that the hat was backwards either.
Neither did I. Listen, it's all a work in progress here, folks. We're building the plane as it gets in the air.
Bernard Pollard, goofy for sure, but Paul Kruger wasn't fucking around.
I don't know if Bernard Pollard was goofy. I think he might be a little too intense. Might have been, yeah.
Yeah. He I feel like I remember him being a little goofy in the media, but on the football field, this team seriously didn't mess around at all. Nothing. Really nothing. So offensively, Ray Rice, liked to talk shit. I would never describe him as goofy. Pitta wasn't goofy. Jacoby Jones was, but that was all right. The one dude.
You need a little bit of that. And I do think that guys just writ large, I just think masculinity just has really changed in the last 10 years. Even those guys who are the hardest dudes on earth for what they do for work. I mean, it's just different. I feel like there's not as much of a macho, I'm going to take your head off. And I think with social media, a lot of these guys are friends. All these guys are probably texting Queen after that game, right? And breaking his balls about the t-shirt and the hat thing. They're all friendly and they know each other. They grew up playing AAU or whatever it is together. And yeah, so I just think it's different nowadays, and you're just not going to get as many guys as you had. And this isn't that long ago. It's only 10, 15 years, but I think the world has changed that much in that amount of time. But yeah, I do think that you're right. We could be more well-served with more intensity like that. And I think Uncle Rowe, I saw in the comments there, he's a guy that certainly brings that.
I think that's a big reason why they traded for him and paid him so much money.
Yeah, sure. I think Hamilton is like that in kind of his own way. Yeah, that's Linderbaum a little bit.
Definitely Linderbaum. I would say definitely Linderbaum. I don't really know, I don't know a lot of guys on the defensive side of the ball that are like that, really. Darius Washington has a chip the size of a mountain on his shoulder.
Yeah.
Nate Wiggins is kind of a quiet dude. Brandon Stevens doesn't really talk much. Adafe Owe. Van Noy's a media personality, but he seems like he's got his intensities to him. Madubuike, I think Madubuike could kill 150 people.
Look at all the roughing the passers that he's gotten this season and the way that he gets them where he just squares up a dude and just drives them into the earth. They're clearly looking for that. I think refs see that on tape and they're watch 92. They clearly have kind of a bias against him in that respect. So he definitely, when we met him, he super nice guy, but yeah, you can tell that he definitely takes himself very seriously.
100 million %. 100 million %. Not just 100%, 100 million %. And we'll get deeper into the Flowers stuff. I'm gonna go back and watch both Steelers games again and watch a little bit of the Bucs game where Flowers was out, some of those things. But I do like and hope, it's one thing to be without Flowers for 1 week. You can scheme around things very well. Yeah, the whole Ryan Jensen was a part of those teams. Is a good one. That whole offensive line, while we're hanging on that topic a little bit, Kelechi Osemele was laying dudes to waste. Jeremy Early, thank you very much. Feels like our fan base is overlooking this game. I don't think anybody is overlooking the Steelers, but I do feel like you said, Jake, Ravens get the monkey off their back a little bit, and it feels like they have surpassed the Steelers in their own class of the NFL sense. The Steelers have been towards that mediocre average, almost Jeff Fisher kind of that's how I think of them, right? They can beat anyone. They disappoint themselves very often in big games.
They just haven't had a quarterback. That's all it comes down to. And that's why I chuckle every time I see Steelers fans complaining about Tomlin, right? Because like this guy is getting you to 10 wins every year, and he is doing it with a poo-poo platter at quarterback. He has had nothing to work with, and they continue to just make it work and sneak into the playoffs. And I know it's tough because you're not getting the big draft pick, and you're not going to go get a Shedeur Sanders this year. And that's where you wind up with like a Kenny Pickett. You remain in purgatory. But Lamar Jackson goes to 32. I mean, if they find a way to strike gold like that, they'll be right back in the conversation. If they hang on to Tomlin and they keep their, sort of franchise's core principles in line.
And we're just doing our own subjective stuff on this. We'll get deeper into everything in the coming days. But Jeremy Early says this game just makes me nervous. I'll just say if they lose the Steelers, and they're not it's the stupidest statement and it's self-evident, but they're not a championship team. Like, you just dealt with this team. You could tell from Hard Knocks, from everything coming out of the castle, how much attention to detail. Todd Monken, we shared that video on here, him fucking running up the sideline in practice and being like, you guys are half-assing this. Stop. Like, we fumble. I'm fucking sick of it. So you know what the bar is.
It makes you nervous. It makes you nervous because you know that there's no excuse if they lose this one, and that is because the only time they lose to the Steelers, which has been a lot lately, is when they beat themselves, when they put the ball on the ground and they miss their kicks. They've done that way too much lately. They've done it way too much against this team lately. The Ravens have the better roster. They have the far superior quarterback. There's no excuse to lose this game, and there's a real possibility that they do. And if they do, they got no one to blame but themselves, and they got a lot of soul searching to do if it happens. And I think you're right to be a little bit nervous about that. I certainly have a little bit of that in my system here.
And that's the big question, right? That's on everyone's mind. I know we've been going for a bit, and it's late, and we got shit to do tomorrow. And we'll get out of here in a little bit, but John Harbaugh in a playoff game makes you nervous. Lamar Jackson, people say doesn't play well. All of those kinds of things. I agree. They have shot themselves in the foot, like you just said, Jake. But again, you just saw the level of attention to detail and intensity required to deal with the Steelers, what it took in the building that week, the level of attention to detail and preparation. They eliminated the penalties. You are at home, which should take some of the jitters out. It's going to be cold as hell. Weather is the great equalizer. I think that Pickens said it himself. It might have been Pickens or Hayward. He said there's no way we lose to that basically shitty Browns team if it wasn't for the snow. Weather is a great equalizer. Anything can genuinely happen. Like the Bengals shit pumped the Bills in bad weather in Buffalo in the playoffs. Anything can happen. Maybe it happens either way, whatever. I don't know.
Ravens miss a couple of kicks versus the Bills in a windy game up there in Buffalo. A lot of people forget.
I think Fast missed too. I think there was 4 missed kicks that game. Could have been an even deeper blowout maybe, and could have been a way closer game potentially.
Yeah, no, it is. You're absolutely right. It is the equalizer, and it makes it so that what makes this interesting is that it probably makes that a team that can run the ball exceptionally well should have the upper hand, maybe you'd think. So, again.
Definitely. And Harbaugh said the entire time on Hard Knocks that week, I'm all high fives and smiles. They make a play. It's attention to detail and not pressing too hard. It's, finding that soft spot between the two. So Matthew Hudek says, at this point, I don't think the Ravens have mistake-free in their DNA. They did have a sloppy game on Saturday, I will say. The Browns punched them in the mouth a little bit. They get some stupid penalties, Zay Flowers hurt, those kind of things. But I think that they understand what it takes now to a degree.
Yeah, I'd say they went on. What encourages me a little bit is that after the bye, as he ducks out here, no doubt taking care of some important business. After the bye, I think they did go on a pretty mistake-free run there, particularly against the Giants. And then obviously they play the Steelers. I know they put the ball on the ground versus the Steelers 3 different times, but you pick it up, and that's kind of the luck that goes into that. I mean, you fumble it twice against them in Pittsburgh, and they wind up recovering it both times. That can affect you as well. So a little bit of luck goes into it. I think certainly a lot of attention to detail. I'd be a little concerned about the 4th downs too. And maybe this was just them messing around versus the Browns, but I didn't understand Lamar's decision not to just get the 1st down there on that first 4th down that they didn't pick up. It was weird. They went to the Kohler Express on that 3rd down. They don't get it. And then they run that play. And then Lamar's just probably trying to do a little too much. I think he could have just kept running and picked that up. And then that other one, they probably didn't have to go for that. They could have just kicked it, and they went for it. Ball bounces off of, I think, Bateman's hands and just, flies up into the air. A little bit, this is the Nick Wright litmus test game. Exactly. Like, I'm going to be super dialed into the Mahomes mountain after this one, no matter what happens. Thank you for the tip, Judge.
Judge, thank you very much for the tip. Appreciate you.
$20.
Feel free to tip if you got a little extra. Help send some folks to the Ravens game. We'll do what we can. We're going to, and again, more details on that. But JJ Sanders also says no Superman plays. Take what the defense gives you. It's all of that, right? And the thing we haven't talked about this entire time is that the Ravens got clowned on for not, running the ball. I think a little bit of that was maybe kind of just situation and some other mistakes. But against the Chiefs, they don't run the football. They're the greatest rushing team of my lifetime over a 2-year period, a 3-year period, a 5-year period, now basically a 6-year period. And you signed Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry thrashed the Steelers once. You're at home. Noise is not going to be an issue. I do think that Mike Tomlin made comments really that Deshaun Elliott being out kind of changed the way they had to play everything. And I do agree with him very much so. It forced Minka to have to do kind of what Elliott was doing, because if not, they were going to get destroyed on the ground. But it is, in my opinion, why you brought Henry here to run in the snow and run in Buffalo if you get there and run in Kansas City. Henry ran rampant on the Chiefs like 5 years ago in the AFC Championship game. They get a 10-0 lead. So that's the low-hanging fruit, right? And that's why the first game against the Steelers in Pittsburgh, Henry fumbles on the opening drive, and you're just like, God damn it. We signed Henry to calm everything down. He puts one on the ground. He loses his first fumble in a couple years. Things like that. And the comment here from Deuce 1042, Gus Edwards and Justice Hill weren't going to be the reason. It's not, I agree with that, but it's also, I agree with that very much. And I've definitely said the same thing, but it's also just that they couldn't just calm down and make plays.
Yeah, I think panic trickled downhill a little bit, where it started with the coaching staff saying, all right, we can't get this run game going the way that we need to. That trickles down to Lamar, where they're throwing it too many times. And then he starts to panic a little bit. He gets that deer in the headlights look in his eyes, and it just unravels in front of you. And really the story of that game is Zay with the penalty and Zay fumbling through the end zone. I mean, if neither of those things happen, we might not even be having the conversation about that game the way we do, even if they had wound up losing, which is the unfortunate thing. But again, that just goes back to attention to detail, not spinning a football in front of a guy's face this time. We're not going to have to worry about that with Zay in this game. Not fumbling through the end zone, not fumbling, period. Try not to throw interceptions to Minka Fitzpatrick for no reason. Try not to miss your kicks. Justin Tucker, who everyone is talking about, Justin Tucker's back, but has he really been placed into the spotlight in a big way? I'm not quite sure yet. So we'll have to see how it all plays out.
Loser leaves town game. Sports Guru 258 says, ugly.
Do you think this is a must win or a can't lose? How would you describe it?
I think it's a can't lose for the Ravens and a must win for the Steelers.
Okay.
That would be my way it falls on that scale. Youssef Kadashi here. Can the Ravens defense generate turnovers and pressure Russell? That's a tongue twister a little. Yeah. Dan Moore, Trey Hendrickson, a better pass rusher than the Ravens have. Obviously led the NFL in sacks this year, but those tackles.
What a thing, Cincinnati. Triple Crown at receiver, MVP candidate at quarterback, who has
led the NFL in passing yards and passing touchdowns.
Yeah, amazing second receiver, probably like a top 10 receiver as your second receiver, leading the NFL in sacks with Trey Hendrickson, and you miss the playoffs. Just like that is levels upon levels of how do you explain this?
It's simple. They have a horrible secondary. They had no back end. And then Lou Anarumo gets fired, which blows my mind because he is the reason they made the run they made. And then they got rid of all of his guys, DJ Reader, Jesse Bates, Von Bell, a leader there. In addition, I think he's not, the driver of that situation, but it's a lot of brain drain. And the Ravens have a much more talented defensive roster. That's why it was more disappointing when the way the Ravens defense started than the Bengals. The Bengals was maybe a little more expected, especially after last year. But, the Bengals started to kind of get their footing enough through creating pressure and blitzing and things like that. Just wild. Eric says, hates that Trey Wingo said Jamar Chase becomes the first 17-17 receiver, which.
Why do you hate that?
It doesn't sound good. That's why Eric hates it, I'm guessing. Falele, they are going to attack him. Cam Hayward is not, I would imagine he plays another year. I don't think he's retiring in this game, but next year is probably a swan song, and who knows? Who knows what the quarterback situation is? You're sitting in the AFC North where you kind of can't overwhelm the Ravens enough to win a division in the last few years. The Bengals, I don't think are going to be worse. I think it is going to be pretty damn hard for them if they have their big guys stay healthy, T. Higgins or no T. Higgins, I'm sure they'll do something to replace him with something effective. But I anticipate Cam Hayward having the game of his life in an effort to get past the Ravens here in Baltimore. TJ Watt and the Steelers were missing guys, man. They had Pickens. They had a healthy Watt when they beat the Ravens. They couldn't, score a touchdown in that game, but Watt was not himself. I expect Hayward to go out on 10 fingers and toes, and it's not, I don't think it's going to be easy. I don't think it's going to be easy against that defense. Joey Porter Jr. banged up in that game. They're a little healthier now. They've had a little bit of rest, a smidge of rest as well, but it's going to be violent, man. I think it's going to be as violent as NFL football is in 2025.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think it'll be a hard-hitting one. I think both defenses are, they have a lot of pride. I think the Steelers were a pretty consistent unit for the most part. They kind of trailed off a little bit. You mentioned their health issues, and then obviously the Ravens. I love, by the way, talking about all the announcements that Cunningham was making. I love the video board talking about how great the Ravens defense has been this season since Week 11. A lot of number one since Week 11 in this category, and Week 11 in that category. And I just turned to the guys I was sitting with, and I wonder why they're picking Week 11. But it's just funny little thing there. Obviously, we all know the answer. But yeah, no, I'm with you, man. I think it's going to be, I guess, back to the original question of being nervous for this one. I don't even know if you necessarily need to just be nervous. I think you just need to say, like, look, it's a divisional game. The Steelers are not some kind of schlub playoff team that they were last season. I think Russ, for all the issues he's had, he's a high pedigree quarterback with a lot of pelts on his wall. He is not Mason Rudolph going into Buffalo, right? This is not like, Skylar Thompson with the Dolphins going into Buffalo.
Whoa. Skylar put up 31 in that game.
Not to pick on Buffalo's wild card wins, but this is not that. This is going to be something a little bit different. So.
Skylar Thompson in Buffalo, Tyler Huntley in Cincinnati, back-to-back games.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, amazing. Just keep expanding the playoffs, NFL. Well done. Good stuff. Just let's get 8 teams next year.
And at the end of the day, I think Saberface says it here well. The Ravens Super Bowl aspiration hinges on that offensive line. They didn't have a good day on Saturday against a good Browns defense, man. That defense, for having a historically bad offense, I think they allow the second lowest explosive play rate. They're not a bad unit. It's just them getting incredibly horrible quarterback play. And even when Winston was playing, Jameis Winston football, he is turning the ball over a ton and getting you back on the field quickly at times. So it's kind of that, ping pong when you have him at quarterback. So that's it. Straight up. Like, Ravens ran a lot of trap. They ran a lot of ways of running the football and counteracting the Steelers' aggression. The Steelers do a good job containing Lamar overall. I think they even still did in that game in ways. The clip from, I think, Hard Knocks or Wired or something of Minka saying to Lamar, like, why you ain't pull that? And he's like, because I know you've got me in man pretty much. So, I handed the ball off and you're going to run with me, and it's taking a defender out of the play. So there's a plan in place, defending Mr. Jackson, all that good stuff. Great time to go back and watch some Steelers-Ravens previous battles. A good time to go back and watch Hard Knocks, all of those good things. We're going to be here all week, every night. We're going to be live. If you're watching, like and subscribe to the podcast. Get us to 3,000 subscribers. Our little mom and pop shop operation here. We want to keep bringing you guys content, make this into a bigger thing for years to come, and keep, trying to have fun in the Baltimore community and the Baltimore sports community and all that good stuff. So we appreciate you guys. We won't say Happy New Year because it's past the Larry David deadline, but any other thoughts here as we've gone an hour in, Jake, as we've ping-ponged around ourselves?
Yeah, no, I just think it's going to be a fun week. It's fun. I think sports and, the NFL specifically becoming more and more corporatized. I think, not intentionally or anything, it kind of tends to kill rivalries off a little bit. And I mentioned the social media thing and the way that these guys kind of are now, it makes things a little bit different. But I think these are 2 fan bases and 2 cities that have a lot of, I think, good-natured hatred towards one another, a lot of respect between both organizations, and I think it's going to be a hell of a war. So very excited.
Most definitely, my friend. Thank you to Judge Baltimore. Thank you to Andrew Browning. Thank you to everybody who left tips. We have Jeremy Early. and JD Newman as well. We appreciate you guys. That'll help send some Ravens fans to this game. Thank you so much, everyone. And on night one of the Steelers-Ravens live streaming, we're going to keep it going. Contest details, if you missed them, I'm going to make a tweet with some emojis and all that stuff that people do to make things look marketable and cool on the Everything app, otherwise known as X. So thank you, my friends. Enjoy the snow day. Stay safe when you're driving. Stay warm. And Jake, you want to get us out of here?
Yeah, no, thank you guys very much for tuning in. Really do appreciate all those tips. Most we've gotten from anyone, and large quantities, large amounts. We appreciate it very much. Hit that subscribe button, like Spenny said. Follow us on X, the Everything app. Just actually crossed the 10,000 mark on at X52 podcast on X as we were recording this. So shout out to, I guess, all of us that really run that one. Nice little milestone there. As we head into this week, you can find me at Jake Luke. That's Louque. Spenny at Ravens 4 Dummies. That's a number 4. Eric hanging with us in the comments tonight. We know he's jazzed about that number 1 pick. I just know that he is already breaking down tape on quarterbacks. Do they want to take one? Do they want to trade out? What does he want to do? Just can't wait to get more breakdown from him on that. Brian at Barstool Banks, Taylor at Taylor Smythe 10. Thanks again to you all, and we'll talk to you tomorrow night.
See ya.
Arrivederci.